Hey everyone, and welcome to DIY Crafts. Let me tilt you guys up a little bit. So today we are in the shop. It is cold, but totally worth it. With Valentine's Day on the way, I thought it would be a really cool idea to show you guys how to make some really cool copper rings. So these are super easy, super simple to make. There's a snake one, there's like an infinity one, plain Jane one, and another infinity one. So these are super easy to make, and if you have the supplies at home, it literally will cost you nothing. So with me, I have wire. This is your plain Jane electrical wire, and a lot of times if you're building a house or if your library is under construction like ours is, there's a lot of scrap wire pieces. Now in this typical wire, there are four, you can see inside there are 4 pieces of copper wire in this one strip here. So if you know anything about electrical stuff, there's many copper pieces in this one bundle. So what we're going to do is we're going to separate the copper pieces from here in order to make these gorgeous rings. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is, if you have copper wire, take it. If you have something like this and it's scrap, what you want to do is take a sharp blade of some sort. I'm using a box cutter, and you're just going to open up the wire here. So I'm just going to do this on the floor real quick. And all I did is I scourged it here so I can expose the inner wires. And if you are an electrician, this is what you would have to do anyway. So you'll see in here, I have 4 different wires, and each one of these is copper. They're just bound by different wire, I forget what it's called, but they're bound together. So you're gonna separate these and just take this strip right off. The more you cut off, the easier it is to come out. So I'm not gonna do this to this wire because I will get yelled at because it's not scrap wire. But I did have a piece of scrap wire that was this big, and this piece is the same piece I just pulled out of here. So it's just this one white piece right here. There's a white, a red, a regular copper, and a black. Usually it's your ground, your live wire, and your other wires. That's about as knowledgeable as my electrician skills go. But what I did is I took this white wire, this copper wire, the red and the black, and I separated them. So I'm separating the pieces. Right now I'm working with the white wire. And right now the white wire has its coating on it. So I want to take that coating off to expose the copper within it. So if you have wire strippers at home, you are just going to open them up and find the part where it fits in. So for me, this is number 12 right here. And all I'm going to do is wrap it around, twist it, and slide. And the coating comes off. The coating is trash. We don't want the coating. We just want the copper wire underneath. So I'm going to take off a little bit more here. And then I'll show you guys how to make your first awesome ring. So copper is very versatile. You can bend it to your needs. You can hammer it. You can do quite a lot of things. If you don't have copper wire at home, you can easily buy craft copper wire at the store. I'm just showing you a really cool way to take scrap wire or trash and make it treasure. So this is my trash to treasures episode. So once you have this all stripped and stuff, you got a pretty good piece, you can go ahead and use your wire strippers and use the wire cutter to cut the wire. So I'm going to go ahead and put this in here, and I'm going to cut it off. So in addition to my wire cutters, wire strippers, my box cutter or X-Acto knife, whichever one you want to call it, I also have here a hammer. I'm going to tilt you guys down so you guys can see the floor here, which is not a very pretty floor, but it's what I'm going to use. This is a concrete floor. This is what I'm going to use to hammer out my pieces. So I also have here a tool kit. Tilt you guys down a little bit more. toolkit of all sorts of wire benders, wire cutters. So I have here a tool that will bend and twirl. I have the cutters. I have, and this is a jewelry set, so it's not like a man's tool set, it's a jewelry set. I have here a flat needle nose pliers so it doesn't damage or make any markings on the jewelry itself, so it ends up flat like this, or it ends up so you don't see the markings here. So I'm going to show you guys how to make this really, really simple one. So I have here a socket. This socket is approximately the same size as my finger. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wrap this around to where I want it to go. So for this one in here, I kind of want it to overlap a little. And all I'm going to do is fold it this way, fold it around. I'm not using any special tools. And because I'm going to flatten this, I'm going to make it a lot longer. So I'm going to take this off and I'm going to cut it probably back to here. So I'm going to use my wire cutters once again. And I'm just going to snip it right here. All right, I'm going to slide this over. And so right here I have this. I'm going to open this back up. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my hammer and I'm going to flatten one end. So when you flatten one end, that's what it looks like. Just gives it a kind of unique look. And then the same thing, I'm just going to take it and flatten the opposite end. And I'm going to go ahead and flatten the other end. And then if I have both ends flattened, I'm going to take my socket again and just wrap it around here like so. And then it's not completely flat, so what you can do is if you just roll it on the concrete or a hard surface, it's going to make it nice and round, just like that. And if it's not round enough for you, you can always use your tools. So I'm going to take this flat needle nose pliers, and I can just bend this to where I need it to be. Just like that, and just like that. And I have a pretty cool ring, so I can put that there. Super simple and adjustable, so I can pull it out to make it bigger, I can push it in to make it smaller, and once I put it on, I can kind of bend it to where I want it to be. If you want, you can get super fancy with these, and before you bend it, you can put a bead on it and then flatten it, so you'll have a bead here or a bead here. So other options here too is you can make this really cool snake, and same thing, you're just going to wrap it around something that is approximately the same size as your hand. And now that I have that round size, it's not big enough to make the snake, but I can take these pliers that have rounded edges, and what I can do is I can just make some pretty cute curly cues. So I'm just going to wrap this around like this, make a little loop, and then do the same thing to the other side and just make a little loop. And all I'm doing is putting it in here and just rolling it. If you roll too much, just twist it and roll some more. So I have two rolled sides. I can take my socket once again, put it in the socket, bring it close together. And now that it's on the socket, what I can do, put it on the ground and just hammer this down a little. And then take this side, hammer this down a little. And what I've done is I've just made a very simple ring. And so if I take this one off my finger, there we go. And then you have another ring. That's just a very cool curly Q thing. This part is a little sharp. So what you can do is if you don't want it sharp, go ahead and put it back on your socket. And hammer it again. So I know they make certain tools to do this, but we are working with what we have here. So once again, it is still pretty sharp. So all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my wire cutters and just snip that sharp part off very carefully, just like that. And then I'm gonna put it back on my socket here and just hammer it out again. So when you hammer it, it makes this really cool flat pattern here. And then if you don't want it hammered, you can leave it just the way it is. But I think it looks pretty cool flattened. And that's my flattened version of it. You can make it bigger or smaller depending on how big you want your loops. Even if you flatten it, you can still bend it after it's flattened. So you can take your little twirly pliers and go ahead and just bend it a little bit more. It is a little bit more fragile once you bend it, so just be careful once you flatten it, sorry. And then that just closes it up to make it look pretty cool. So I have the loop end that's not hammered, and then I have this end that is hammered. And once again, if you want both sides to look pretty symmetrical, just put it back on that socket and hammer it down. It doesn't take a lot of effort to flatten it. Copper is such a soft metal. So there it is. And then all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bend this piece in just to make that loop tighter, so don't catch it on anything like my clothing or whatever. And there we go. I have this really cool, I'll take this one off. I have this really cool, unique ring that I can flatten, I can adjust, and it just looks really cool. Very simple, very interesting. You can kind of be really creative with these things. You can do 2 layers and do multiple loops. You can do just single layers and no loops. You can do swirls to make like a snake design. The opportunities here are pretty endless. It's up to you what you like and what you enjoy. So these are just a couple of samples of what you can do. I'm gonna tilt you guys back up. All right, so we just took plain Jane boring wire. We took the wire strippers, we stripped it, and we did some hammered copper. Hammered copper rings, look them up on the internet. They're pretty up there, but you can make them yourself. Word to the wise, copper will turn your fingers green. So if you wash your hands, you want to take the copper rings off. If you use a smaller gauge wire, you can put smaller beads on here. So it's entirely up to you what you're interested in. So like for instance, for this really cool snake ring, you could always put like a snake eye bead at the top or at the bottom. And then once you put it on, you can just hammer the end to keep the beads there. So pretty cool. And copper is not just limited to rings. You could make some pretty cool wire wrapped stones. You could do some pretty cool wire earrings, copper earrings. So in the future, we are going to be doing some more work with some copper jewelry and things that you can do with copper. So if you want to follow along at home and you want to do some of this stuff, I highly suggest you either find yourself some scrap wire, which is really convenient because you can pull out quite a lot of strips of copper and it costs you nothing. Construction sites, I'm sure, would give that to you. Or you can go to craft stores and get your own copper wire and create your own copper jewelry. So stay tuned. Eventually we'll be working more with copper jewelry and we will get outside of this copper ring zone into some other copper things. So that was the craft for today. Copper jewelry, hammered copper jewelry to be specific. And hopefully you guys stay tuned. At some point we're going to do some copper rings and some copper necklaces. So until next week, happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your week and all the snow.